Good evening, everyone. Welcome to this meeting of the Shareholder Committee. Apologies for a slightly late start. Just before we begin, having consulted with the relevant guests that we've got with us, we are going to move item 7, City of York Trading Limited and Work with York Limited update, right to the end of the agenda after the work plan. That's because that has private confidential papers as part of it, and it will allow us to manage the meeting better and avoid us having to send our other guests out of the room and bring them back in again while we deal with it. So I think everybody's agreed with that. So unless there's any objections, that's how we'll deal with that. Apologies for absence. There are none. Do we have any declarations of interest? No. Minutes then. I have the minutes of the meeting held on the 3rd of February 2025. And unless there's any corrections that need to be made, I'll sign those after the meeting. Yep, great. So the next item is the exclusion of the press and public, and that is for agenda item 7, as I just mentioned, to the confidential annexes A and B. What we will do is we'll look at the parts of the report that we can look at in public first. Then we will close the live stream, go into private session to look at the private papers. Is everybody agreed with that? Yeah. Great. We have no one speaking in public participation, so I'll skip straight on to item 6, Yorwaste Limited Finance Update. Sandy.
Thank you, Chair. I'll skip our boilerplate action number 1 or point number 1. It's pretty much the same. We've had that, and I think everyone here is familiar with that background. In terms of the outcome for the year, from a health and safety perspective, another excellent year. No RIDDORs, no lost time incidents. First time ever for no lost time incidents. Second year in a row with no RIDDORs. So it's showing that our investment in that area is paying off. In terms of our operations, we've done well with our operations. We've sort of increased our commercial revenues, and we've managed to upgrade our materials recycling facility so that we can handle increased volumes and produce the increasingly higher levels of quality that are required by our off-takers. In terms of the big thing from the EA agency this year was the implementation of separation of persistent organic pollutants, POPs, at household waste sites. That's proving to be a bit of a challenge, but it's one that we've met. This is going to cause problems longer term because it's basically the more we segment our waste and segregate our waste, the more we need to think about capacity at our sites, both on the household waste sites and at our waste transfer stations. And then obviously you'll be aware that we've got planning approval for Harewood Wind for the solar. So we're working with the City of York Council on how best to proceed with that one. In terms of the financial performance, turnover was flat, primarily due to about 1.7 million fall in the gas revenues, which we've explained in previous meetings, and that's been offset by growth in our sort of commercial and other waste activities. So all in all, in the full year, we kept a good tight control of our cost, which has allowed us to go to 1.65 million for our full year reported profit before tax. And as we've done previously, the accounts will be available once they've been lodged with Companies House, so that should be at the next shareholder committee. So any questions on that so far?
Any questions? Go ahead, Councillor Kilbane.
Thanks, Sandy. Can you give us an example of a persistent organic pollutant?
Basically a 1980s sofa, 1990s sofa. I think it was around about early 2000s they stopped putting the chemical into foam, but it's upholstered materials. So if you think of that old foam stuff that you might have had in a sofa from your student days, that's probably a good example. So
I think the sofas from my student days were significantly older than that.
Yeah. So those are the things that we need to segregate, and they need to be disposed of via incineration rather than landfill. That's the key reason for the segregation, because when it goes into the landfill, the persistent organic pollutants don't break down. They get into the leachate and they can get into the wider sort of environmental chain thereafter. So they can't be removed via treatment.
Councillor Kilbane.
So are they still being manufactured, or is this a problem that's going to fade away?
They are not being manufactured. They've been banned from, as I say, somewhere early in the early 2000s. So in theory, they will fade away. In theory, most of the stuff will already have been given the normal churn of an average sofa. But that doesn't seem to be the approach that the Environment Agency is taking. So we've got to go by what they say, even if some of their approach to it is questionable logic. So.
Can you expand on that?
Yes. So, for example, we've got to, if it touches any other waste, that waste must also be considered to be POPs. And then when we take it to Alton Park, right, it needs to be treated in a particular waste. So the key issue for us is that if we're a normal operation for Alton Park, it shouldn't be an issue. We shouldn't need to segregate it because it goes to Alton Park for burning. Their counter argument is that when Alton Park is in contingency, it makes considerable use of landfill. And as a result, at that point, we need to have the segregation. And considering that Alton Park can go into contingency at relatively short notice, we need to have both streams segmented.
By contingency, you mean they can't burn everything?
By contingency, it is not burning, and therefore it will have to redirect to waste, which ideally should be to another EFW, but quite frequently is to landfill. Okay. And then in terms of where we are at the moment, it's a bit too early for the current year, but we're off to a reasonable start. We're in line with where we expected to be. Simpler recycling came into effect. So for commercial companies, we need to have separate food waste collections. So that's something we've implemented, and we've had a good start to the year with that in terms of the uptake and the implementation and rollout of that. And then in terms of safety measures, we've popped in a new sort of safety measure which fits the heavy plant and reduces the risk of pedestrian collision on our waste transfer stations. We've trialled that at Harewood. We will, in the process, roll that out to other sites. And in terms of looking forward, I think there's quite a few big picture decisions that need to be decided between both shareholders. What do we want to do with materials recycling? Do we want to do it all in a single site facility? What's going to be the requirement for increased segregation of waste transfer stations and volume going forward? What might we want to do in terms of any future treatment of compost and food waste? Some of those are more immediate and need decisions probably in the next sort of 2 to 3 years. Some will be a little bit more medium term in probably the 5 to 7 years. And that's it. So.
Thanks, Andy. Any more questions? Councillor Eyre?
Just a quick one, as it was quite topical. I was reading about the problems that obviously Scotland are introducing the landfill ban by the end of the year. And
Yeah.
we're talking about having,
and you're going to have somewhere in the region of 700,000 tonnes.
I've got 600,000 tonnes down here.
So
in terms of
heading south of the border, yeah.
Are we picking any of that up, or is that going?
So I think they've filled all the things that are on the immediate border. They've now started to approach suppliers or EFWs in the sort of the Teesside region. Most of those are at or close to capacity, so they're only going to be picking up little bits and pieces of it here. So in theory, we would be next on the list. That would be an issue for the shareholders in the Alton Park to sort of make that approach, because Alton Park has its own commercial segment that in theory it could offer up. So it's Talia, the operators of the park, have got a segment of the waste that they could sell. And then there's also a segment that the authorities can sell that we historically have managed for them on their behalf.
So reading between the lines, that's potentially financially beneficial, but not for us first.
If it pushes the price up, then it could be financially beneficial. We'd need to sort of see what the price is when it comes in. I think there's every chance that they might need to reconsider it once again, because they're going to struggle to find a place to get rid of 700,000 tonnes without incurring incredibly high disposal costs. So it is one that is kind of hard to see how they're going to make it work in reality, but it will be interesting to watch them try. So.
Anything else for anyone? No. Patrick, is there anything you wanted to add on this?
No, thank you.
Marvellous. Okay, that report is noted. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
So as I said, we're going to take item number 7 right at the end. So we'll move now to the Veritau business update report. Max.
Thank you. So, but obviously the main
change from Veritau last year was the corporate restructure and the creation of the two companies. That's all sort of settled down now. There's just a few bits and pieces of tidying up. One of those, one of the key outstanding issues is Middlesbrough Council failed to sort of meet the original timetable for joining VPS. They have now they've almost completed that process. So they'll be taking, or they plan to take a report to their executive on the 16th of July. So subject to approval, Middlesbrough Council will then become a member of Veritau Public Sector, and in turn that will allow us to wind up Veritau Tees Valley as a subsidiary, and we'll also wind up Veritau North Yorkshire, which is a current dormant subsidiary at the same time. So in doing so, that sort of tidies everything up, and it means that by winding up those two companies, we'll save some costs. The report outlines the sort of the draft financial results for the two companies. They are still subject to audit and therefore could change. I don't think they'll change a great deal though. So we are pretty much where we expect to be in terms of profit for the two companies. The sort of total turnover was slightly higher than we expected. The cost of sales was correspondingly higher. So it's pretty much all worked that the net result is where we wanted to be, and that is after spending about 33,000 on the costs of the restructure. So that's various legal costs that we incurred. We've also since the last meeting of the committee, signed up for the Armed Forces Covenant, and our Cyber Essentials accreditation was renewed. And then finally, the report summarises the results of the two client satisfaction surveys that we conduct, as well as the staff satisfaction survey. So happy to take any questions on the report.
Thanks, Max. Questions, Councillor Eyre?
Yeah, just a quick one, Max. I didn't have a chance to benchmark, but obviously last year's client satisfaction was very poor in terms of response rate. This year, it's significantly better. Was that a massive blip in terms of only 3.1% of people responding last year, or have you done significant work to drive that back up again?
Well, the main survey, it was 9.8% for the main survey last year. It was 17.6% this year. We did make a bit of an effort to try and encourage people to respond. So that the main survey goes to the member council, so it's senior officers. So we did a bit of encouraging, should we say.
Thanks. Any other questions on this? It's good to hear about the tidying up of all the kind of creation and winding up of different companies. I think that'll make a big difference. So I look forward to next time hearing that Middlesbrough Council hopefully will have joined VPS. Thanks very much, Max. So I will just check if there's anything to add, Dan, from your perspective.
No, there isn't.
Great. Then are we content to note the report, Councillor Kilbane? Yep. Marvellous. That's great. Thanks very much, Max. I'll now move on to consider item number 9 before we go back to number 7. So item number 9 is our work plan for the coming year. Any questions or comments? It's our very standard routine of reports that we receive. So unless there's any comments or questions, no, then we will note that, and then we will move back to item number 7, which is City of York trading. And again, we've got some confidential restricted papers in here, and A reminder to anyone who's looking at their papers on paper, please don't show any of the pink pieces of paper on camera, because it creates work for our colleagues to make sure that they can't be seen on the live stream. But we'll go to the public report first, see if there's anything there that we need to note in public, and then we'll end the live stream. So,
Councillor Wormuth, do you want to do urgent business?
oh, apologies, yes,
Sorry.
we have no urgent business. I'll do some urgent business. There isn't any. Apologies. Thank you, Helen. So, Helen and Karen, is there anything you want to bring to our attention in the public part of consideration on this item?
Yes, we've asked for approval from. We've asked for approval from the shareholder committee for certain appointments to the boards of the company or certain nominations. I've been made aware today that actually the shareholder committee does that in conjunction with the staffing matters and urgency committee. So I just ask that any decision or approval that you make is subject to that further process, which I think is going to be in about 2 weeks' time. 3 weeks'
14th
time.
July.
Great.
Okay. So at the annual council appointments, Councillor Claire Douglas was approved as a director, non-executive director of City of York Trading Limited, and that appointment has now been made by the company. However, there was no appointment to work with York Limited, as would have been expected. I think the company, being a new company at that point, had possibly missed off papers. So we're asking that the shareholder committee, subject to SMU, make the same appointment as to CYT, that Councillor Claire Douglas be a non-exec director. Basically, because all of the other non-exec directors are non-exec directors of both companies. So that made sense to do that. We're also asking that Councillor Claire Douglas be nominated as chair of the board of directors of CYT Limited, because the previous chair, Councillor Ian Cuthbertson, indicated he was going to resign as chair. And Councillor Douglas agreed to that, subject to all the various procedures. And then also we're asking that once the appointment has been made to work with York Limited, Councillor Douglas also be appointed as chair of the board of directors of Work with York Limited. Thank you. Very confusing, I know. And Work with York Limited has been missed off my little sign as well, but I'm sure that'll be sorted for next time. It's probably because it's been missed off. Yeah. So the big change actually since our last shareholder committee is we've created and moved staff across to Work with York Limited, which has been a major undertaking. But we did it, and we did it by the 1st of April. So basically Work with York Limited now provides temporary, interim and some permanent staff services to City of York Council, and City of York Trading does all our commercial and non-council work. So that was the split required by TECL effectively. Work with York Limited is 100% supply to the council, so 100% TECL compliant. Currently, Work with York are working on a Assistant Director of Housing permanent role for City of York Council. We've got a current campaign running for that, which ends on Sunday next week. Okay. There are lots of other bits of information in the pink papers, but
we'll come on to.
I don't really want to talk about them at this point.
Of course. So any questions on those items, Councillor Eyre, and then I'll come to you, Councillor Kilbane.
Thank you, Chair. I think it's less of a question, more sort of a general point. I mean, this entire agenda is 40 pages long, and there's so much going on behind it. And obviously lots of it is confidential and we can't do it. But I think I would like all of them to be a lot longer, but this one in particular doesn't seem to have any information in the public domain at all. I think when you look at paragraphs 10 to 13, which is key company matters and current work plans, the vast bulk of that is just a list of who the directors are, which anyone can get from Company House. So appreciating that there's a lot that we can't talk about. I think at the end of the day, this is a publicly owned company, and I think we should be getting as much information as possible. Some key performance indicators, for example, will be commercially confidential, but there's a lot more information that we can actually get in, and I think a public report should have as much information in as possible. And a long time ago, we had a maxim about as few salmon papers as possible and as much in public. I just think perhaps we need to shift for most of these reports as well to get as much into the public domain so people can see what's happening and as little into that. I appreciate it's been a very difficult time for you and a lot of flux and change and everything, and you haven't necessarily had the resources to write 150-page reports for the council. But I think just honestly, for members of the public that read this, there's not really any information at all that they could get about what companies doing, be that positive or negative.
Thanks, Councillor Eyre. I think that's something that we probably need to look at, but quite carefully in terms of the preserving the commercial confidentiality that we need to preserve. But I think I saw everybody nodding as you were talking, so I think it's something definitely to look to for future reports. Councillor Kilbane.
Yeah, thanks. I'd certainly support that as well, Chair. I think it's more a question of looking at what do we need to take out rather than what do we need to put in. And mine's just a typo, just on paragraph 6. Councillor Ian Cuthbertson is having something on the 6th of June. I'm assuming that should say leaving.
No, it says the previous chair, Councillor Ian Cuthbertson, should be a comma, having on the 6th of June indicated to the board his intention to step down as chair, comma.
Okay.
There's just a missing comma.
There you go.
Commas.
Apologies.
Never underestimate the power of an Oxford comma.
Thanks for that. Okay, so recommendations, paragraph 2 and 3, obviously refer to the private papers, which we'll deal with next. But recommendation 4, 5 and 6 are all about the missed appointment of Councillor Douglas to the Board of Work with York Limited, and the nomination of Councillor Douglas as chair of the Board of Directors for both City of York Trading and Work with York Limited. I'm reading it carefully so I get them the right way round because I keep confusing the two names. And noting that the appointment and nominations will also need to go to the Staffing Matters and Urgency Committee for their approval. But is everybody happy to approve those recommendations? Yep. Then I feel quite confident that Staffing Matters and Urgency should look positively on those as well. Any other questions, comments on this report before we close the live stream? No, in that case, we'll move into private session. We won't reopen the live stream for this meeting because we've dealt with all of the other business that we can do in public.